So all of the filming updates are done. So let's go ahead and talk about Joe Willems. So why are you laughing at me?
This is the name Joe Willems is just, I don't know why. There's no reason why I should find it funny, but I just do.
Willems.
The way you said it, too, you had like a certain enthusiastic pizzazz to the way you presented it, like Joe Willems. Like everyone should be excited to talk about it.
We should be excited to talk about him. This is very exciting.
All right. Well, I need to get with the program here and get as excited as you, Rebekah. So tell me why should I be this excited about Joe Willems?
Why don't you let Savanna intro first?
Okay.
Okay, so Joe Willems, who we are very excited about, is the new director of photography, a.k.a. DP, a.k.a. cinematographer. And this is exciting because he has some great credits to his name. He was the cinematographer for Limitless, Confessions of a Shopaholic, 30 Days of Night, Hard Candy, a ton of other really cool films and TV shows. And, you know, so many people had a problem with the look of The Hunger Games that I think having a new cinematographer might be kind of refreshing. For those of you who are listening and don't know what a cinematographer does, I found a fabulous definition for you guys, and I'm just going to read it because it very eloquently yet succinctly, I never know how to pronounce that in its adverbial form, but this is a really clear description of a cinematographer's role. The title is generally equivalent to Director of Photography, or DP, and it is used to designate a chief over the camera and lighting crews working on a film. The cinematographer is responsible for achieving artistic and technical decisions related to the image. The cinematographer selects the film stock, the lenses, filters, etc., to realize the scene in accordance with the intentions of the director. So the director basically comes up with a vision, what he wants a certain scene to look like, and the cinematographer makes that happen. So, you know, they would control the lighting of a scene, like I just mentioned, the type of lenses used and things like that. So all of that being said, Rebekah, why should people be super excited that Joe Willems is the new cinematographer? Because
he's completely far removed from the previous cinematographer's style. Let's see, I even watched one of his films today, well, most of it, and then I had to get in the car and go someplace else. But he's very modern. He's a lot younger than the previous cinematographer. I can't remember the previous guy's name. Somebody help me. Anyone else?
What was the previous? Wait, what was his name?
I think there was a B in his, or it was initials.
This is how much we loved him. We can't even remember his name. It just says so much about how we felt about his work. But Joe, we're on a first name basis. Whatever. He's younger. He's much more innovative. He really likes to play with things a lot more than I would say your average cinematographer does. He loves to work with different film stock, which gives a different look to almost every scene. He loves to work with different kinds of filters to establish different moods for character perspective or audience perspective. He loves to work with different levels of, like, I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly, but his style seems to really favor focusing from above. Like you'll get an establishing shot of the main character, and you'll see them from above, from the top of their head, and then he'll move down and move out, and you'll see them from the front, and then he'll zoom in. He loves close-up shots of facial features, so you can get the real emotional response from a character. And back to using filters, I mean, I think the best example, most recent example of his use of filters was in Limitless, which hopefully many people have seen. I believe it's R-rated, so everyone possibly hasn't seen it. But if you can get your hands on it, go watch it. It's extremely innovative with the use of explaining the different points of view or the different mind frame of the main character, who's played by Bradley Cooper. He gets a hold of this drug that changes his ability to filter and access information in his head, and you go from him being extremely depressed and floundering through life, and everything is gray. The entire world around him is gray-toned and depressing, and then he gets a hold of this drug, and bam! It's saturated and beautiful and clear, and if you have an HD TV, it's even more beautiful, but it's just so many more megapixels. And if you go back to see previous work of his, he used this same methodology in the film Hard Candy, which stars, what's her name? Patrick Wilson and
Isla Fish. Oh, no, I'm thinking of Confessions of a Shopaholic.
Yeah, Confessions of the Shopaholic. That's probably more accessible to your average person, because I believe it's PG-13. But Hard Candy is R-rated, and it was actually the first film that I'd ever seen Ellen Page in, who everyone knows from being in Juno, and she's nothing like Juno in this film. I think it's from 2005.
So I have a question. How much of the decisions are made by this guy? Because Gary Ross caught a lot of slack for the shaky cam. But was that a directorial thing? Was that a director of cinematography thing? Like, where does the divide between those two roles come in?
I think it really depends on the experience of the director. Now, Gary Ross has been involved in all aspects of filmmaking for, I think, longer than Francis Lawrence. And Francis Lawrence, if you pay attention to his career up to now and read or listen to interviews, he relies extremely heavily on the expert who he ends up working with, i.e. the cinematographer. If you listen to the commentary on Water for Elephants, he was so adamant about his trust in the cinematographer for that film, and we all know that film turned out beautifully from a visual point of view. But with Gary, I think because he's kind of a control freak in that sense, I think maybe the cinematographer and him had to compromise on that use of the camera, and I think we all know that it's quite possible that tactic will be mixed this time around, because it's gotten so much flack from even your average person who's not a fan of the series. They'll going, I hated the shaky cam, why did they do that? And not understanding that it was supposed to display the uncertainness of the districts and the uncertainness and the changingness of the characters or whatever, blah, 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 let's intellectualize everything. But am I just boring everyone talking about
No, you're not.
Cinematography?
No, and I'm really inclined to think that, like you said about the activeness, is that a word? Depending on how involved the director is, you get the sense that Gary Ross had his fingerprints on every single thing in that movie.
He was in that editing room every day for like 6 months. We all know this from the extras that we saw on the DVD. So
right, and that really speaks for, and I know, Shylah, this is dear to your heart, the whole why Gary Ross, didn't feel he could do it in the certain amount of time is because he wants to be involved in all aspects, and I guess he just didn't think he could do that in this time frame with Jennifer Lawrence's months limitation, and that's just sort of a sad thing. So I wonder, though, if this time with Francis Lawrence, if you really will see a lot more delegation, and maybe there will be people like Joe Willems will have significant input into the way the movie is made, far more so than these types did in the first film. I mean, is that reasonable to conclude?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already seeing that delegation with, the fact that Francis Lawrence doesn't look like he had a hand in the screenplay, which was, Gary Ross is, I think, his biggest thumbprint on the whole Hunger Games movie, aside from any directions he made in the director's chair. He crafted the story from, the novel to what we saw on screen. So already having that big chunk delegated to someone else and trusting someone else's vision and words is a big deal. The only thing that I'm still, I'm really stoked about Francis Lawrence, and I really like what we've been seeing, but I'm still a little hesitant because of that one person who's been pretty silent and who was a lot more vocal last time around, and that's Suzanne Collins, who had input on almost every press release that came out about these actors, and so I'm excited. I'm excited to see the delegation and the fact that we have some really awesome talent, especially in the screenwriting room. But not hearing from Suzanne makes me wonder if she's less involved in this film, and that kind of makes me a little nervous, probably for totally inane reasons, but nervous nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a bit odd that she hasn't commented on anything so far. Last year, she had statements about most of the main castings, I think. It would have been nice to have gotten something from her about, Sam Claflin or Jenna Malone, just to, sort of make sure that our confidence stays at, a high level. I mean, I'm definitely confident in his choices, but hearing her endorse them really means the world to me, as to a lot of other fans as well. I'm thinking, there is a year until the film premieres, so maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll start to hear from her a bit closer to the release. I don't know. Crystal, do you have any thoughts on Joe Willems? I know you were not a fan of the shaky cam.
No, I wasn't, but I mean, looking at, watching the movie at home, I think what bothers me more than the shaky cam is, the focus and, how dark it was. I mean, I know the lighting is intentional at times, but to me it just seemed unnecessary in a lot of places, when they were, eating dinner in, the Capitol apartment or something. Just, I don't know, I mean, a lot of times it just wasn't in focus, everybody's faces were fuzzy and stuff, and it's not something that you notice when you're in the movie, but when you're, trying to take screen caps or something like that, it just becomes really irritating, because, you just want a nice, crisp image of them, and it's, I don't know, it just doesn't, I have a hard time.
Yeah, didn't Gary Ross know that fan sites need these screen caps? I mean, come on. He has to know that people are going to want these shots.
Come on.
I think he could care less.
That was literally the last thing on his mind.
He's like, I got to make a movie, story, picture quality, what?